study of ecology. Ecology is when scientists study the interactions between organisms and the interactions amongst organisms and their environment. Scientists are exploring how different aspects of an environment interact. In an environment, there are both biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are any living parts of the environment: animals, plants, protists, bacteria, and fungi. Abiotic factors are the non-living parts of the environment, like soil and rocks and sunlight, weather conditions, and moisture. A proper study of ecology involves an analysis of both the biotic and abiotic factors in an environment.
In each of the world's ecosystems, there are two things that influence the lives of the plants that live there: abiotic factors and biotic factors. The prefix "a" is Greek for without, and bios is the Greek word for life. If you put these terms together, you get abiotic, which means without life. So it makes sense that abiotic factors refer to the non-living things in a plant's physical environment. Sunlight, soil, wind, rain, and temperature are abiotic factors. And if abiotic means without life, then biotic factors are the living organisms in a plant's environment. A butterfly pollinating a flower, a monarch caterpillar munching on a leaf, and a robin's nest in a tree are biotic factors.
The Earth represents a biosphere. The biosphere is all of the biotic parts of the Earth, as well as all the abiotic places in which life exists, such as land, water, and the atmosphere. This biosphere includes the region 8 kilometers above the Earth's surface, or into the atmosphere, to 11 kilometers below sea level. Life can be found in all of these locations. A biome is a large geographical area with a characteristic climate and unique plant and animal life. These characteristics help scientists describe a biome. Hopefully, from previous science classes, you are aware of the Earth's different biomes. There are 6 major biomes on Earth. These include tropical, deserts, grasslands, like the biome we live in, temperate, taiga, and tundra. The following videos discuss the properties of different terrestrial biomes, or biomes on land, and freshwater aquatic biomes.
The Earth is covered by a variety of regions of characteristic vegetation called biomes. Examples of biomes include tropical rainforests, like those found in the Amazon basin and northeastern Australia, the temperate deciduous forests of Europe and the eastern United States, the coniferous forests, or taiga, that span much of northern Europe and Canada, grasslands, like those that once covered much of the central United States, the African savanna, that supports some of the Earth's great populations of herbivores and large predators, chaparral, found along coastal areas in places like California and the southern tip of Africa, tundra, that covers much of the land near the Arctic Circle and the upper slopes of mountain ranges, and deserts, like the Namib along the southern African coast and the Sonoran of the American Southwest. All living organisms, no matter which biome they live in, require 4 basic resources in order to survive: nutrients from which to construct living tissue, energy to power that construction, liquid water to serve as the medium in which the reactions that build living tissue occur, and temperatures appropriate to carrying out life processes. Nutrient levels sufficient to support life are found in most of the Earth's surface strata, as is witnessed by the taiga and grasslands that cover what was once the bare rock left by receding glaciers, and the lush paradises that exist on islands formed by the lava flows of volcanoes. Likewise, sunlight, which is the initial source energy for all terrestrial biomes, is available in adequate quantities in most biomes at least part of the year. However, the other 2 requirements of life, liquid water and temperatures appropriate to carrying out life processes, are unevenly distributed on the Earth's surface. For example, liquid water is much more readily available throughout the year in tropical rainforests than in the Earth's desert communities. Likewise, temperatures appropriate to carrying out life processes exist throughout the year on the African savanna, while on the alpine or Arctic tundra, appropriate temperatures may be reached for only 5 months a year, and even then may be much lower than those of the savanna. Thus, it is largely the availability of liquid water and temperatures appropriate to carrying out life processes that sets limits on the amount and types of organisms that can exist within a given biome. In deserts, for example, plant and animal life is sparse due to the limited availability of water, and though the species inhabiting any of the Earth's great deserts may differ, they all have adaptations that enable them to deal with extreme heat and drought. Likewise, all the species living on the tundra have adaptations to deal with extremely cold, harsh winters, short growing seasons, and the layer of permanent frost that lies in the soil right below them, even in the summer. The major factor affecting the distribution of water on the Earth's land surfaces and average temperatures at various locations on the globe is climate. Freshwater lakes vary tremendously in size, depth, and nutrient content. Although every lake is unique, moderate to large lakes in temperate climates share some common features, including distinct life zones and temperature stratification. The distribution of life in lakes depends largely on access to light, nutrients, and the kind of materials, sand, rock, etc., that form the bottom of the lake, and what kind of habitat and attachment sites they provide for aquatic organisms. Thus, the life zones of lakes correspond to specific locations within the lakes. The littoral zone lies along the shore. Here the water is shallow, and plants find abundant light, anchorage, and adequate nutrients from bottom sediments. Not surprisingly, littoral zone communities are the most diverse. Cattails and bulrushes are found near the shore, while water lilies and entirely submerged vascular plants and algae inhabit the deepest reaches of the littoral zone. The congestion of plant bodies in the littoral zone traps sediments carried in by streams and by runoff from the surrounding land, further increasing the nutrient content of the zone. Living among the plants of the littoral zone are microscopic phytoplankton, such as photosynthetic protists, bacteria, and algae, zooplankton, such as protozoa, and a diversity of animals, including small crustaceans, insect larvae, snails, flatworms, hydra, and other invertebrates, along with vertebrates such as frogs, small fish, and aquatic snakes and turtles.
Biomes can be composed of different ecosystems. An ecosystem involves the interactions of living and non-living parts of a community within a specific biome. For example, in the temperate grassland biome in which we live, we have a terrestrial grassland ecosystem along with some freshwater pond and stream ecosystems. When studying a specific biome, it is important to understand the flow of energy through that biome. Life on Earth does not exist without the energy from the sun. Heterotrophs like you and me cannot exist without those organisms that are able to convert the energy in sunlight to energy-rich foods like glucose and carbohydrates through photosynthesis. These primary producers, or autotrophs, are more commonly known as plants and algae. Autotrophs store the sun's energy, making it available for other organisms. This graphic shows the productivity of the primary producers across the U.S. In other words, it shows the amount of light energy that is converted to chemical energy by the autotrophs in different regions of the U.S. You can see that in the desert and mountainous regions of the U.S., plants are not as efficient at converting light energy into chemical energy. Now, this may just be because there are less plants in these areas. The autotroph productivity is much higher along the coasts. The moist conditions encourage vegetation, And more plants means more conversion of light energy into chemical energy. The primary productivity of a region is affected by several abiotic factors, including the amount of light, liquid water, and available nutrients, as well as the temperature of the region. As consumers, we rely on other organisms to meet our energy and nutrient needs. Consumers are also known as heterotrophs. Remember, any organism that cannot create its own food is a heterotroph. So other examples of heterotrophs include carnivores, who only eat meat, herbivores, who only eat plants, omnivores, who eat plants and animals, decomposers, detritivores, who feed on dead plants, and scavengers. Each biome or ecosystem has a carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is the largest number of organisms a biome or ecosystem can support with its available resources. In any biome or ecosystem, a population of organisms will grow steadily until it overshoots the carrying capacity. In other words, more organisms exist in that environment, and the available resources are insufficient in supporting that population of organisms. Inevitably, this leads to the death of organisms and the population declines. An environment's ability to sustain a population of organisms depends on certain limiting factors. Eventually, populations of organisms recover and stabilize around these limiting factors. This graph here shows a population overshooting the carrying capacity of the ecosystem and then adjusting to the limiting factors of the environment.
What limits the size of a population? Have you ever wondered why there aren't a million coyotes everywhere? Coyotes are smart and are great at finding food no matter what. So shouldn't there be more of them? The size of all populations is limited, meaning populations can only get so big. The reason there aren't coyotes everywhere is because there are certain things called limiting factors that keep the density of a population down. Density means the number of organisms in a particular area. Some limiting factors are called density independent. These factors are not affected by how many organisms are in a population. Temperature, floods, and pollution are all examples of density-independent limiting factors. Other limiting factors are only important if the population size or density gets too big. Predation, competition, disease, and the amount of available food are all density-dependent limiting factors because the more organisms there are, the more these things become important. If there are only 10 coyotes in your neighborhood, there's probably enough food for them all. But if there's 50 coyotes, there won't be enough food. And if there's a flood, all the coyotes will be affected, no matter if there's 10 or 50.
Limiting factors are situations that cause the growth of a population to decrease. As described in the video, some limiting factors are density independent, meaning they affect the population of organisms in similar ways regardless of the size of the population. Density-dependent limiting factors only relies on the size of the population. Density-dependent factors start to affect a population once their numbers grow too large. These factors are more intense when the population is large and spread over a small area. One example of a density-dependent factor is competition. Competition for food, water, and habitat. Disease is another density-dependent factor. The closer organisms are in an ecosystem, the more likely disease will spread. The more the population of organisms is spread out, the less likely disease will spread. Density-independent factors affect the organisms in an ecosystem regardless of the size of the population. Good examples of density-independent factors include weather, climate, and natural disasters like floods, fires, tornadoes, and the like. This graphic is a good example of carrying capacity and the limiting factors that control the size of a population. The fish population in this aquatic ecosystem increases until limiting factors start to affect the size of the population. More fish means there is less dissolved oxygen in the water. More fish means less food. More fish means disease spreads more rapidly. More fish means more prey for predators that feed on that fish. More fish means less habitat for the fish to find shelter and protection. These limiting factors determine the size of the population that can adequately survive in that ecosystem, otherwise known as the carrying capacity.